Final Fantasy games have always been emotional affairs. You laugh, you cry, you get really angry, but let's focus on that crying part. Here are 10 moments from throughout the series that trashed your emotions and broke your heart. We couldn't list the 10 saddest moments in Final Fantasy without this iconic moment. While trying to summon Holy so Cloud's gang can save the world, Sephiroth skewers poor Aerith just as she finishes praying. To add insult to injury, not only is our hero seconds away from saving her, when Aerith dies you lose all the materia you had equipped her with. We revisit this moment again and again in the film Advent Children, where Cloud is repeatedly visited by Aerith's spirit as she guides him in his fight against the Sephiroth clones. And who didn't burst into tears at the end as she walked away into the light of the life stream? Tragic. Black Mage Phoebe struggles with the meaning of life. After watching the senseless slaughter of the Black Mage army, Phoebe comes to believe that life is expendable, only to learn soon after that it's also not permanent. One Black Mage describes how another stopped moving. He says, quote-unquote, "Mr. 36 is buried under the ground now, but I don't understand why. He's going to come out again one day, right?" Phoebe learns that death is not just for the sick and injured. Death comes for us all. His existential crisis is powerful and a little frightening. And although he eventually comes to believe that life is precious and what you make of it is up to you, watching his journey to this point is heartrending. Orin is the stoic guardian of Tidus and then Yuna. You journey with him for 40+ hours until suddenly, horrifyingly, you learn that he's actually been dead this whole time. In his younger days, Orin went on a pilgrimage with Yuna's father Braska to defeat the evil entity Sin. But because nothing is ever easy, at the end of the journey, Braska and his other guardian, Tidus' father Jex, sacrificed their lives to bring 10 more years of peace to the world. Not having any of it, Orin confronted Yunalesca, the powerful undead summoner who carried out the sacrifices. Furious with his questioning, Yunalesca dealt Orin a fatal blow to the head. He died, but did not move on. He stayed on this plane, a living ghost, unable to rest until Tidus and Yuna succeeded in defeating Sin.
This is your world now.
Following Kefka's destruction of the world, Celes wakes up on an empty island with her adopted father, Cid. Cid cares for Celes as he himself becomes sick and weak. What happens to Cid next can go one of two ways. Playing as Celes, you catch different kinds of fish to feed him. Feed him the fastest fish and he'll get well. But if you only catch the slow-moving, weaker fish, Cid will die. And if Cid dies, you're shown a cutscene where Celes climbs to the top of a nearby cliff in tears and throws herself off in a suicide attempt. She survives and wakes up on the beach, but oh man, is it rough to watch. It's very rare for such a mainstream game to tackle suicide at all, and you can feel Celes' pain. Her despair at losing everyone she loves is so great, she just can't make herself go on. Paladin Cecil's ragtag band of heroes are joined by Palamon and Porum, two prodigal 5-year-old mages. After a particularly grueling battle against the archfiend Cagnazzo, the group is caught in a trap as the walls around them begin to cave in. To save them all, Palamon and Porum turn themselves to stone, preventing the walls from closing in any further and allowing Cecil and his companions to escape. You can't heal them, you can't remove them, they're just statues. The fact that these kids are barely out of their toddler stage, coupled with the whole thing happening very abruptly, is just soul-crushing. Even though they reappear later in the game, fully healed by the mysterious Elder, this doesn't diminish the gut punch of watching them sacrifice themselves.
Porum.
When his son Daj turns to Crystal following the fulfillment of his l'Cie focus, Saz breaks. But then he learns why his son was branded a l'Cie to begin with. Vanille and Fang tried to kill a fal'Cie, and the entity branded Daj in an effort to protect itself. Up to this point, Saz has been protecting Vanille, essentially his son's killer by association, with his life. Then Saz really breaks and turns his gun on Vanille, but she doesn't run. When she says she doesn't know how to atone for what has happened, Saz drops his weapons and resolves to die. Then an Eidolon appears, a creature that will kill any l'Cie who tries to die. These scenes are lore-heavy, and it's easy to get lost in the proper nouns of Final Fantasy XIII's world, but that doesn't diminish the power of watching these characters struggle to find hope.
Okay, fine. You want me? Come and get me!
We learned in Final Fantasy VII that Zack died fighting Shinra soldiers. In prequel Crisis Core, published a decade after the original game, you get to participate in this moment. You play through the entire game knowing that at the end, Zack will die. And as you play through his last stand, the controls literally stop working on you. No amount of button smashing does anything. Everything just spins out of control, and just as you come to terms with the fact that you're fighting a final boss battle that is destined to end in failure, it's done. Zack, riddled with bullets, passes his sword to Cloud and dies. You knew this was coming, but having to actually live through it, brutal. Sky Pirate Redis was once a powerful Judge Magister, but after being manipulated by the scientist Dr. Sid to activate a superweapon and decimate an entire city, he left his title behind, tortured by what he'd done. Throughout the game, Redis offers counsel to Ash and her crew, as well as some backup muscle. He accompanies the party to find the Sun Crest, a stone that will grant Ash an untold amount of destructive power. Once there, the party learns that the stone has already been activated and is powering the Final Fantasy XII equivalent of the Death Star. Redis eventually sacrifices himself in destroying the Sun Crest, opening the way for the team to confront the game's final boss. Redis didn't have to, but chose to die, which already makes this tragic. But after all you've been through with him in the game, it's tough to cope with his sudden absence.
I, Judge Magister, condemn you to oblivion!
The last we see of Laguna in Final Fantasy VIII, he's standing at his wife's grave. After losing out on his first love, Laguna marries Rain, who nurses him back to health after a botched war expedition. Laguna is called off again when sorceress Adele kidnaps Ilone, Rain's adopted daughter. Laguna leaves not knowing his wife is pregnant, and after eventually saving Ilone and defeating Adele, he sends the girl home to her mother and then becomes president for some reason. Rain, meanwhile, dies giving birth to her son, heavily implied to be Hero Squall, and her 2 children are sent to an orphanage. Laguna never sees Rain again, and he loses nearly everything he's ever loved. In the end sequence, we see him visiting Rain's grave and reliving his proposal to her. After a lifetime of heartache, that's all that's left for Laguna in the end. Talk about a total downer. Final Fantasy Tactics is literally just one big series of really unfortunate events. It begins with death, ends with death, and nobody is happy. Jesus, Final Fantasy Tactics. What moments from the Final Fantasy series really broke your heart? Let us know in the comments below, and for all your Final Fantasy news, stick to GameSpot.com.